Welcome to where every nightmare begins, and watch to the end if you're brave enough. Today, we continue with the chilling horror film, Demon Eye, 2019. The story opens with Sadie, a young woman who has just moved into a secluded mansion in the woods following the recent suicide of her father. She doesn't know the specific reason either, but just as she entered the house, she saw a camera. The screen changes, the camera records someone entering the house. He quickly came to Sadie's side, and then said that Sadie's father was his colleague, and the purpose of his visit was to introduce a job opportunity to him. This job is to take over her father's photography work, a special request he made before passing away. Sadie asked her father why he hanged himself, but Dan said he didn't know either. Sadie thought that since she just returned and didn't have a job, she accepted the business card. After Dan leaves, Sadie goes to the basement and sees the surveillance monitors. She's barely sat down when suddenly the lights go out, and a baby's cry echoes from upstairs. She followed the sound to another room and heard it coming from under the bed. She then took out a doll from inside, as if recalling her childhood memories. Sadie breaks down, covering her face as she sobs. The next day, Sadie arrived to start the job her father had once arranged for her. Tony glanced at her from head to toe, showing no favoritism despite her connection to his old friend. Instead, he made it clear she would have to start from the bottom. He even bluntly told her the newspaper only had 6 months left before it would shut down. On the wall hung the newspaper Padfoot Terror, which was her father's work. Thanks to that, the newspaper made a lot of money publishing a series of sensational articles. Right next to it hung the newspaper The Evil Eye. Sadie's main task is to take photographs and dig up information related to the Evil Eye. When she arrived at the office, she met Dan, who explained that her father had been his colleague before he passed away, and now, it was her turn to take over his work. Then the two went out to find documents. Just halfway through the journey, Sadie took out her camera to test it, but she captured a strange scene. The image showed a burning woman, and just as she tried to zoom in, the camera ran out of battery. Luckily, Dan has spare batteries in his car. They soon arrive at an old man's house, and as Sadie pulls out her camera, the old man immediately protests, "No photos or recordings allowed here." Hearing this, Sadie starts scrolling through the photos she just took. Suddenly, she saw the burning girl. Strangely, when she zooms in, the girl completely disappears. Suddenly, the old man said that he knew Sadie, because her father and he were very close. He added that her father was indeed too greedy, wanting to grab everything for himself. Perhaps that was why he hanged himself. Sadie was unhappy hearing this and started to leave, but the old man called her back. The old man asked if she was still self-harming, and brought up how Sadie's father used to lock her in dark places as a child. Hearing these words, Sadie's unhealed wound was torn open again. Filled with anger, she rushed into an argument with the old man. Dan saw the tense situation and had no choice but to take Sadie and leave first. Dan thought they needed something from the old man. And besides, it was part of their job. At that moment, the old man was the only one who truly knew the story behind the demon eye. After the two of them had calmed down, Dan said he would go to the car to get something. But suddenly, Sadie saw a chain on top of the cabinet. Curiously, she took down the book, opened it, and discovered that it looked like an eye. That night, Dan told Sadie how the demon's eye originated. In 1851, while a girl was sleeping with her pet dog, they heard someone talking, mentioning that there would be a famine in the coming weeks, because her father was a blacksmith. The girl walked downstairs, almost in a trance, and used her father's tools to forge an eye-shaped pendant. After showing the necklace to everyone, the father found it very strange. As expected, after the girl's story spread, many people in the town died due to the famine. Everyone called the necklace the demon's eye, and the girl was labeled a witch by the villagers. They believed her curse caused the disaster, so they decided to execute her publicly. After tying her up, they not only gouged out her eyes, but also burned her and her pet dog. After the girl was burned to ashes, only the necklace remained. That legend has been passed down for over 200 years. However, that necklace is currently in Sadie's possession. She just has no intention of revealing this. Dan warned that if you ever asked the demon eye for anything, you could make your wish before it. But the price would be steep. After learning the legend of the necklace's origin, Sadie believed the girl had harmed his father and felt deep hatred toward her. She took out the necklace and slammed it fiercely onto the table. When it was slammed down on the table, the light suddenly changed color. Then she heard the sound of a child crying once more. After entering the room, Sadie's emotions collapsed. She grabbed nearby scissors, ready to harm herself. Just as she was about to make a move, the phone rang. She followed the sound to another room and suddenly fainted. At that moment, a vicious dog appeared nearby. The next day, they went to the place where the girl had been burned. Suddenly, Sadie started feeling nauseous and then unexpectedly vomited a clump of hair. Faye couldn't help but mock Sadie. The two immediately got into an argument. Dan immediately interrupted, saying that to complete the mission, they had to act out a scene of pretending to see the burning woman. Sadie was adjusting the camera. Suddenly a girl appeared in front of her. She was startled, dropped the camera on the ground, then saw nothing. That night, when they got home, they were about to discuss the remaining newspaper information. But Sadie said she wanted to take a shower first, so Dan started researching on his own. After making sure Sadie had left, he went to the basement and saw the surveillance footage. He curiously opened a file on the computer and found a recording of Sadie's father before his death, who seemed to have discovered something. The scene then shifts to John, who heard a child crying and followed the sound to a room. As soon as he opened the door, he discovered a doll lying on the ground, crying, "Woo-wah! Woo-wah!" Curious, he stepped forward to pick up the doll, and suddenly noticed what seemed to be a little girl's hand under the bed. He picked it up in fear and threw it to the ground, then looked closely and realized it had been eaten by a dog. Seeing this, he ran out of the room, continuously muttering that he was willing to give everything to the other party, and then hanged himself. The scene changes to Sadie taking a bath. She suddenly felt something in the bathtub, reached in, and pulled out a clump of hair. After hearing Sadie's scream, Dan quickly came to the bathroom door. After the two met, Sadie recounted in detail what she had witnessed at the time. With a nervous mindset, he approached the bathtub and swept his hand through it, finding nothing. After Dan left, Sadie had barely dozed off when suddenly, a black hand appeared at the end of the bed. The next day, they came to the old man again. While Dan was on the toilet, the old man leaned over and asked Sadie, "Has that evil spirit taken over your body?" He then shared his own tragic story. After discovering the power of the evil eye, he made a wish and ended up having his right eye gouged out. The old man asks Sadie what she wished for with the necklace, and upon hearing this, Sadie plans to leave. After returning to the office, perhaps feeling unsettled by the whole thing, Sadie tucked the necklace away in her drawer. Just as she was about to leave, Faye burst in, asking Sadie if she was trying to steal Dan, claiming she was already pregnant with his child. She also said she'd used her connections to get Sadie fired. Despite Sadie's earnest attempts to explain, Faye remained relentless in her accusations. She went downstairs to leave, but Faye stopped her, demanding Sadie hand over the keys. As soon as she closed the door and walked away, Faye heard the sound of a baby crying from upstairs. When she went upstairs to check, she found a doll broken into pieces and was too scared to approach. Just as she poked his head out to look down, terrified, Faye crawled upstairs. When she dared to look down again, the malevolent spirit had mysteriously vanished without a trace. She told herself it must have been a hallucination, but suddenly a dog appeared right before her eyes. As evening fell, the two were about to secretly do something behind Faye's back when, suddenly, a gun was pointed at Dan's head. After that, they were knocked unconscious. When they woke up, they realized the old man was behind it all. The old man tied them up in the basement just to get the Eye of the Demon necklace, because he was the one who discovered it first. After lending the Eye of the Demon to Sadie's father, he did not return it due to his own greed. And after Sadie's father died, the old man never saw the necklace again. It was only when he saw Sadie wearing it around her neck that he decided to take it back. Just then, Sadie noticed on the security monitor that a door had closed. She knew the evil spirit was coming with the necklace, so she told the old man that the Eye of the Demon was upstairs. After the old man left the basement, they untied themselves and escaped. Then Sadie said they must return the Eye of the Demon necklace, otherwise the evil spirit would continue to stay around them. Downstairs, Sadie turned on her flashlight and found a map. She told Dan this was where the necklace was originally found, then asked him to return it while she distracted the old man. Dan had just left not long ago when Sadie suddenly heard her father's voice and turned around to see a figure. When Sadie was about to step forward to ask, when she ran to a stairwell, the evil spirit suddenly appeared right in front of she. She fled to the bathroom, where she heard his father's voice again. But when she lifted the white cloth, there was the old man, with his other eyeball gouged out by the evil spirit. He then told Sadie that they had no way out and would eventually fall into the hands of the evil spirits, and then he shot himself. Horrified, Sadie ran away and found herself in what looked like an altar room. A figure wrapped in white cloth appeared before her. Sadie curiously approached, pulled the white cloth away, and was surprised to find that it was Faye. Faye kept repeating that Sadie killed her child, and then, she gave birth to a doll. Sadie was too terrified to speak. Meanwhile, Dan reached the location marked on the map. While searching for the evil spirit's remains, he accidentally fell down a hole. He happened to see the skeleton of the evil spirit, and then hung the necklace on it. Just as he was about to escape upwards, the evil spirit suddenly appeared and dragged him down. The scene shifts, and Sadie sees her dead father again. The father told Sadie the evil spirit wanted her eyes. Suddenly, the evil spirit emerged from the shadows, flying towards Sadie repeatedly until it reached out and ripped her eyeballs out. 1 month later, Tony visited Sadie because their newspaper was selling well. However, Sadie needs to narrate the specific details, and Dan has been missing since that night. Noticing Sadie's hesitation, Tony brought up the fact that her eye treatment would be quite costly, suggesting that she could continue contributing articles to the newspaper in exchange for the paper covering her medical expenses. After hearing what the boss said, Sadie left and waited for the driver to pick her up. Unexpectedly, the necklace appeared on the ground, and Sadie asked the driver to pick it up and put it in her bag, saying, "That should belong to me." Then he left with the eye of the demon, and with that, the story ends.